from our area. We are dominated by surface high pressure just to the north of the Virgin Islands. Our forecast details, there's still a risk of a shower tonight with overnight lows 78 to 82, easterly winds at 10 to 15. Partly sunny with isolated showers tomorrow, highs 88 to 92. It'll be mostly clear, 78 to 82 tomorrow night, partly to mostly sunny on Thursday, highs 89 to 93. Rip current risk during the day Wednesday will be highest on St. Croix, particularly on east and southeast facing beaches. I'm meteorologist Russ Murley.
We are at the end of today's WTJX newsfeed. I'm Marcelina Ventura Douglas. Join me every weekday at 5 p.m. And if you haven't already, be sure to download the WTJX app. If you missed a part of today's news, you can listen to it on demand wherever you get your podcasts. Up next is Commissioner's Corner, hosted by Department of Education Commissioner Dr. Dion Wells Hedrington.
The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect that of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the Commissioner's Corner, sponsored by the Department of Education. I am your host, Dr. Dion Wells Hedrington, and it's a pleasure to be here on this Tuesday. It's been a hot minute since we've been live, but we're looking forward to our discussion this afternoon. As usual, this is a platform for us to discuss many issues and have guests that work closely with the Department of Education on this platform to provide you with updates. Again, you can catch us every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. right here on WTJX Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as VIDE Facebook and YouTube pages and 93.1 FM. I am honored to be in the presence of one of my favorite colleagues, Commissioner Avril George. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Hedrington. Thanks for having me here with you tonight to have an important discussion.
Yes, and thank you for accepting the invitation. And I'm looking forward to our continued partnership because we serve the same families, the same students. And so we're here to discuss one of the pressing issues that VIDE has been dealing with for quite some time. As the community is aware, we had an employee back in 2019 that was accused of sexual abuse of minors, of boys. And he went through the process of the judicial system and was incarcerated. And during that time when the information was brought to light, Governor Bryan at that time had asked for an independent assessment of the department to be done. And we are here as two newbies because it happened when we both were not in these current capacities. But we are here to execute and talk about some of the partnerships that we are forging to ensure that this does not happen again, and making sure that all of our systems, policies, and procedures are shored up and that we are operating under the same premise. And so, Commissioner, can you talk a little bit about the PRAED report that was published that is available on VIDE platform as well as yours? What was that whole process about?
Okay, so I'll start by saying the work that we are doing together to protect the children of our Virgin Islands is vital. And I appreciate our collaboration as we move forward in corrective action steps, next steps going forward, and how do we improve our processes to make sure it's aligned with us on the same page.
Right.
The PRAED Foundation review has allowed us to closely examine how child abuse reports are made and received. The findings presented in the Parade Foundation report has provided valuable insights into our systematic challenges and, more important, solutions that will ensure that our children are better protected and that no report of abuse and neglect goes unaddressed. The collaboration between Department of Human Services and Department of Education is an essential step in us making sure that we share the same commitment to fostering a culture of safety, transparency, and accountability. We are leading by example, and I say leading by example to state that we're showing that Child Protective Services is a system that requires every agency to do their part in regards to reporting abuse, taking corrective actions, and making sure that we're working together. So the Parade Foundation review gave us a holistic view of our processes, our procedures, not identifying one case in particular, but where are gaps, where we can make corrective actions, and making sure that our, not only the teachers, your paraprofessionals, your principals, and even parents are aware of the process and reporting, not only to VID, but DHS platform on child abuse, so we can take the necessary steps on our end. Child abuse is dear to DHS heart.
Right.
We have processes in place in regards to reporting, and it does not mean DHS on a whole. We have Women's Coalition, we have VIPD. There's partners involved in this process to make sure that we address each case and make sure it's thoroughly reviewed.
So the Department of Education has always had a very close relationship with the Department of Human Services. We do service the same students and families. If a parent or a student doesn't feel comfortable making a report directly to anyone in the Department of Education, is there some place that they can call at Human Services so that they can make an official complaint? Because I know that at VIDE, one of the things that we've done is establish the anonymous hotline. And what we find is we've been getting all sorts of complaints on that platform, but it gives a opportunity for our students to feel safe enough to say when an adult may not be treating them right, whether it's sexual or not, it could be academically or whatever, that requires us to dig deeper. And so I am not sure if you have a means outside of us being mandatory reporters. If someone saw something in the community, for example, what should they do?
Let's start with challenges we found when going through this process.
Okay.
We live in a small knit community. People are afraid to speak up based on fear of lack of confidentiality, fear of retaliation, and fear of legal repercussions. There also hasn't been enough guidance or support to let people know how exactly what to do or when they see something concerning. So what we're doing on our end in this collaboration is working on creating a single telephone contact for reporting child maltreatment, similar to a hotline, rather than it being right now how it's set up is different numbers on different islands.
Right.
So we want to make it a single hotline. We're also working on an online tool for reporting abuse, so it's easier and safer for everyone to report. So that's a process that we're going through right now. Before we get that process in place, I do have the hotline numbers if individuals want to call in, which is St. Thomas, it's 340-774-0930, and St. Croix is 340-773-2323, and in St. John is 340-776-6334. Reports can also be made to the Office of Intake and Emergency Services, which is 773-2323, extension 2059. So the single hotline is a process and will help instead of individuals having to remember what number to call, who to speak to. So that's in process, and as soon as we get that developed, we'll make sure that we do a media outburst, including with education and in regards to where people can report.
So I've been in education for 31 years, and even coming up the ranks as a teacher, as a assistant principal, principal superintendent, all the way up, we know that we are mandatory reporters. And there's a chain of command if something is brought to our attention, or if something that we witness, we report it to the supervisor, who then contacts DHS to report it if other means need to be, or measures need to be taken. So when in reviewing this particular report, I was sort of surprised at the number of respondents that had indicated that they weren't aware of protocol. And so since then, we have been working tirelessly here at the department in collaboration with you and Government House to make sure that all the policies and procedures are written, and to also make sure that individuals are trained. So I believe in training individuals, and I know that your department has played a critical role in assisting us with trainings. Can you talk a little bit about some of the training that can be offered through Human Services?
We're now going through, we're now partnering with your Department of Education to do training in regards to principals, counselors, school teachers, even parents, in regards to how do we identify child abuse? How do we report it? Who is the person responsible for reporting these actions? What are our reporting structure? How do you document it? So it's a tool that we're going to be providing to the teachers as well as your subordinates, and we take away that notion that we don't know.
Right.
This shouldn't be only done at the beginning of a school year, because we onboard individuals throughout the year. We get new teachers, new representatives come on board. So it's us providing the training to your team to know what to expect, how to report it, how do we realize fear of reporting. So it's a process.
Right.
I think our first training is this Friday.
Right.
This Friday we have our first training, and I hope that the individuals that participate know the importance of the training and making sure that there's never a stupid question. If they don't know, they have to ask. Because once we go through this training, the teachers, whoever participates, sign off on it, means that you're knowledgeable about the reporting process, and it can be prevention. Prevention is better than cure.
Correct. And so we thank you for beginning that whole training series, and something that you mentioned that I think we often take for granted is making sure that everyone is trained, that our teachers are trained, that it become a part of the onboarding process when new employees come on board, and that we keep it as a continuous cycle. In addition to, reporting abuse, we've been having to deal with adult situations as well, adults, and it's just a lot of different gamuts that we are addressing within VIDE and in collaboration with you. When it comes to the intake process, how does that work? So if a complaint is made to intake, what's the next step?
Intake takes the complaint, and then they have to start their review.
Okay.
It's not just that you take a complaint and you rest it on a desk and it stays there.
Okay.
They have to reach out to the parties involved. It was VIPD involved. You have to go out and you have to investigate the problem. You have to interview participants. Whether it's the child, whether it's a parent, whether it's a neighbor, whoever made the report, the interview process start. And then after all the interview process, and you include the parties that needs to be involved, you go back to next steps. What do we do next? We got our information. We meet as a group. We go through the findings and we move on. Whether charges need to be filed, whether a child needs to be removed. It's a long. People think that you make a phone call and you make a report and you just go and you pick up a child, or you go and get someone arrested. It takes. You want to make sure that when you do it, you're doing it right. So the end results, we have already went through the correct process in regards to reporting, documenting, bringing VIPD involved, bringing Women's Coalition involved before you deal with the end results of having any actions taken. So intake takes the information in. We're responsible for doing our investigations, doing our interviews, and then the findings are given.
Yeah, so in this particular case that happened at the Virgin Islands Department of Education was very unfortunate. And there were many different layers that, definitely we have to tighten up in terms of the reporting process. But one of the things that I love about what you said is it's a process. And sometimes when people make complaints, they expect immediate results, but there's a series of things that must take place when a complaint is given in order to validate and make sure that you're channeling it into the right hands.
Yeah.
You mentioned VIPD, whether you may not have to remove someone from the home. So, that's very important in providing that clarity. When it comes to personnel and the fact that we starting to see a little uptake in certain cases across the territory, is there any fear in terms of personnel and you being able to handle the volume of stuff that may come forward now that people have the awareness, even if something's happening in the community, to really handle all the needs of the territory?
Governor Bryan made it clear, and I think in his statements in this regards, that we're serious about making sure that these reports are handled confidentiality and with integrity, and people need to feel safe reporting abuse, while we're also dealing with ongoing investigations. The PRED report allowed us to look at the bigger system so future cases don't slip through the crack. And DHS now is making that approach that if we have to staff up, if we have to add additional staff, make sure the staff that we bring on is trained to handle the volume of cases. That's our responsibility. And I do think that if resources is needed, if we see a shortfall, we have the opportunity to reach out to Governor Bryan and say, we have an influx in cases coming on, we're short staff, we're going to have issues dealing with these cases. How do we go about making sure that we get the funding to bring on the appropriate staff to handle the volume that comes to DHS? And I think we have been successful in reporting our needs because our mandate is high at DHS. We deal with individuals from cradle to grave.
Right.
You're talking about child care, you're talking about adult protective services that deal with senior abuse. And the administration has made it a commitment to making sure that we have the necessary tools. And I've been in a year, and a year is not enough to deal with some of the challenges we face. But I don't want individuals to fear that DHS is not properly staffed to handle, so that it don't make any sense to report it. Reporting is the first step in solving our issues. So bring it on. DHS is going to be ready to tackle any case. I have a knowledgeable, experienced staff, and I always thank them and I show my appreciation for the kind of work that we're doing. We get some negativity on the side,
of course,
but when you look at the work that we're doing and the cases that we're dealing, the team is well appreciated and tremendously supported to meet the mandates of the Department of Human Services.
And we appreciate you. This whole situation has brought a lot of areas to light that, we need to work on internally. One of the things that I appreciate is the training and the signing off on the training, because that's an accountability measure that no employee should be able to say that I don't know. And so, for me, that was one of the areas that really stuck out in that whole report. Like, we take things for granted, but if we're not training people and if we're not holding people accountable, then how useful are we in protecting our children? And so this whole experience, how unfortunate it is and how long of a period that the abuse occurred is unacceptable to both of us and to the community and to our parents who trust that when they send their child to school, that they are going to be protected. So now that the criminal charges have been made, the Attorney General did his investigation. It is now on VIDE to, move forward with some disciplinary actions when it comes to any employees who may have been found guilty of being negligent. And this is a message that is being sent to not only VIDE, but any other agency that may have adults that work with children, that this is not something that we are going to take lightly, but these are measures that all agencies can benefit from that deal with students or deal with children. And so when it comes to the communication piece, I don't think we have a problem. Do you see any areas that we may have to do better at in terms of communicating and collaboratively working as two entities with the same mission?
I think the improvement. I think we're improving the way that Department of Human Services and Department of Education work together. This will allow us to make sure our reports are handled faster and more effectively. We also making sure that the kids know it's the rights. They have to feel safe in reporting any incident and allowing them to have private spaces to speak if they think something is going wrong. My team will laugh when they hear me say this. I always ask my team, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expect different results.
Correct.
The Parade Foundation review gives us an opportunity, not only Department of Education Department, but also government on a whole,
Right.
to know our gaps where we can make corrective actions to make sure we don't have this repeated instance again. What can we do differently? And it's sad because it took something like this to happen.
Correct.
For us to know that Houston, we have a problem. How can we address it with our gaps in our communication, our gaps in training? But it also gives us the opportunity to make it right, to take the corrective actions to fix it. In reading, I know we have different media sources that commented on the release of the reports, but I want to ensure the public and the community, as well as your staff and our staff, that we're going to do it right. It takes change. Change is not always bad. Some changes are good, but it takes change and better communication to make sure train. You can't give enough training to make sure our staff fully knowledgeable about what it takes to make sure that every child in our community remains safe.
Right, and there's one thing that we as a community need to work on, and that's the stigma. And you mentioned that there's a fear of retribution, there's a fear of retaliation. I don't want to be involved in anything with anyone, but as adults working with children, we have a responsibility. And one of the things is we got to treat everybody's child like if it were our own. And if that's something that you wouldn't tolerate with your own flesh and blood, you shouldn't tolerate it with anybody else.
Child.
And so, this is not a new something. I think that there have been some unsolved cases before. In my tenure, I've had to deal with dismissing 2 employees for something similar to this. And so it's not something that I sleep on. It's not something that I'm not serious about. And we definitely will be moving forward with some action. But, I want to say part of the reporting required that we have additional safeguards. And additional safeguards include some of the things that we just talked about, with the hotline, with the open communication, with the training and making sure that the employees sign off, indicating that they understand what their roles and responsibilities are. Is there anything else that you think as a department that we need to work on as additional safeguards? Anything else? I know for me, my director of community relations has been working with the anti-gun violence and different organizations who come in and speak to our students about good touch, bad touch, that type of stuff, because it's not just about training the adults. It's about making sure our students understand this is your space and nobody has a right to violate your space. This is what you should do if that happens. Do y'all do any of those types of training as well?
We have those training on our Head Start.
Okay.
And when we bring in our Head Start teachers, our preschool teachers, Remember, we deal with the Head Start.
I saw you on Facebook dancing
Listen,
and having a good time.
When you do those kind of activities, it hit home. It
Right.
let you know your purpose in this department. Dealing when you had the Head Start open, you got to see kids, you got to interact with the children, you had to interact with the staff. To it hit home on why you're placed here. One of the things you asked if you can do anything differently. I know you guys used to have that
University?
university. It doesn't mean that teachers, students, guidance. You can also train the parents. Things happen at home. Parents don't know until after the fact. So include training for your PTA. Well, you have PTSA, PTA. I'm trying to remember.
PTO.
PTO. My children are
PTA.
at age 34
Yeah,
and
yes.
30 and up. But these training can also be included.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you need to bring back. I know your parent community might have stalled. I don't know if you still have that.
So we're bringing it back to life this year. Our director of school community and parent relations, they're working on that. But I am going to suggest it to some of the PTA presidents that I know.
That you can do
Right.
a session with your parents about what our process is. You get a buy-in when you involve the parties.
Right.
It's quicker to say, oh, well, they provided us training, and that means action is being taken. So it's always good to involve them in the process. You'll get constructive criticism and things you can do differently from a parent standpoint.
Of course.
Not just the teachers. So that is something you guys might look at, included this training with your PTSA, your PTA, so they could be involved in the process and you'll get a buy. We are happy to assist in this process. We're here to support you and to collaborate with you to make sure that we're on the right trajectory path in what we can do different to make sure that our children of this community remain safe.
So I thank you for that. And my last comment is, I've done some rounds last year where I met with the student councils of the high schools, and they talked about their needs, students' needs, and the fact that sometimes students just need an outlet as well. And so that didn't fall on deaf ears because a lot of our children are dealing with circumstances outside of school. We have to protect them in school, but we also got to protect them in the community and in their homes as well. And providing, some of that behavioral, social, emotional support is what we're doing and partnering with the Department of Health to do. So we have partnerships going on throughout, GVI, because all of us service the same children. And at the end of the day, we want our children healthy and whole and to become productive citizens in our community. So, I told you that time goes very fast. And so we're almost at the end. We have 2 minutes to wrap up. Anything you want to share with the community in a minute, Commissioner George?
I'll say looking forward, our goal is to simply make sure our schools are safe and to make sure every report of abuse is taken seriously. Governor Bryan also said our children deserve the highest level of protection. We're going to keep working to make sure that every child can grow up safe and no reports get ignored. I just said let us continue. Funny that you mentioned the Department of Health. I think I'm a touch of a button from Commissioner Kanyasong and her team in regards to how can Department of Health and Department of Human Services continue the collaboration in regards to protecting our community. So all government agencies across the board have some tie. So I just say we just need to put our next steps, our action, our stuff into action so people know that it's just not talk.
Right.
We're taking the necessary steps to make sure that our teachers are trained, our PTSA take the additional steps in regards to our PTSA and continue this collaboration.
So I want to thank you for coming on today. And this is not going to be the only show that Commissioner George comes on.
And this is my first.
And she
this
was
is
like,
my first.
I don't like these things, but she came
This is my
anyway.
first radio show.
So thank
and
you.
We're going to be doing a lot of public releases
You
in
have to.
regards to the great work, not only the negative, but the great work
Yes.
that DHS is doing going forward. We have a couple shows coming up on the administrative corner. We're doing a lot of great stuff.
I know you are.
And I'll stand here and say I'd like to thank the staff of DHS for
Awesome.
the continued support, the continued hard work that they're doing in our community. Awesome team. We have our challenges, but we're working through them. And
All right.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
It wasn't.
And
So
I'll tell you my one famous word, and I'll be remiss if I don't say DHS on the rise.
GHS on the rise. Well, thank you for being on the Commissioner's Corner. We're looking forward to the collaboration. And thank you to the listening and viewing audience for being faithful. See you next Tuesday at 5:30. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect that of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
As for Tuesday evening, the 17th of September, a few showers